Sarah lived a simple life on her family's ranch, nestled in a valley where the sun always seemed to shine just a little brighter. Her world revolved around the comforting routines of ranch life. Feeding the chickens, tending to the vegetable garden, and, most importantly, helping her father with the cattle. Her father, a man weathered by the sun and wind but with a heart as big as the Montana sky, was her best friend. Every morning, before the sun peeked over the horizon, Sarah would meet her father in the barn. The air would be crisp and cool, filled with the scent of hay and horses. He'd hoist her up onto his favorite horse, a gentle giant named Buck, and together they'd ride out to check on the herd. He taught her everything he knew about ranching, from identifying different breeds of cattle to predicting the weather by the way the wind blew. Evenings were spent on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple. Her father would tell her stories of his own childhood on the ranch, of daring adventures and close calls. Sarah would listen, captivated, her heart swelling with love and admiration for this strong, kind man. He wasn't just her father. He was her hero. She knew every line etched on his face, every callous spot on his hands, and she cherished them all. Their bond was unbreakable, woven from years of shared laughter, hard work, and unwavering love. Their ranch, though simple, was their haven, a place where they belonged, together, always. The peace of their little haven shattered like glass on a cold morning. A sudden storm, brewing with unexpected fury, swept through the valley. Sarah's father, ever vigilant about his cattle, rode out to higher ground to secure the herd. Hours passed, and the storm raged on, a symphony of thunder and relentless rain. Sarah waited anxiously by the window, her heart pounding with each flash of lightning. Then, a knock. Not the gentle knock of a friendly neighbor, but a heavy, somber thud. Two men stood on the porch, their faces grim, their hats dripping with rain. Sarah knew, even before they spoke, that something terrible had happened. "Sarah," one of the men began, his voice thick with regret. "There's been an accident. Your father, he was struck by lightning." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Sarah felt the world tilt on its axis. The color drained from her face, leaving her pale and trembling. Her father, her rock, her hero gone. Couldn't be true. It had to be a nightmare. News of the tragedy spread through the small town like wildfire. Neighbors, friends, and acquaintances offered their condolences, their faces etched with sadness. The ranch, once filled with laughter and warmth, was now cloaked in a heavy silence, broken only by Sarah's quiet sobs. The vibrant colors of the sunset seemed dull now, the warmth of the sun a distant memory. The world had lost its shine, and Sarah was left adrift in a sea of grief. The comforting routines of ranch life were now just painful reminders of what she had lost. The days following her father's death were a blur of hushed voices, tearful embraces, and the constant, gnawing ache of loss. But amidst the genuine sorrow of the community, a cold undercurrent began to surface. Sarah's stepmother, Clara, a woman she had never truly connected with, and her two half-siblings, Emily and Thomas, arrived at the ranch, their faces masks of practiced grief. Clara, with her calculating eyes and sharp tongue, immediately took charge. Funeral arrangements were made with a swiftness that felt disrespectful to Sarah. Decisions were made without consulting her, her opinions dismissed with a wave of Clara's hand. Emily and Thomas, always distant and aloof, echoed their mother's sentiments, their presence adding to Sarah's growing sense of isolation. "This is a difficult time, Sarah," Clara said, her voice devoid of warmth. "But we need to be practical. Your father left everything to us, as you know. The ranch, the cattle, everything." Sarah's heart sank. She wasn't concerned about the money or the possessions, but the blatant disregard for her feelings was a sharp blow. "But this is my home," she stammered, her voice trembling. "It was your home," Clara corrected, her gaze unwavering. "Things will be different now. You're welcome to stay, temporarily, but you need to understand that you'll have to contribute. We can't afford to support you indefinitely." The unspoken words hung heavy in the air. She was an inconvenience, an obstacle to their newfound wealth. The funeral, it seemed, was more about settling the estate than honoring her father's memory. Sarah felt a profound sense of betrayal, not only by her stepmother and siblings but also by the very home she had always known. The ranch, once a symbol of love and belonging, now felt like a cold, unfamiliar place. Despite the coldness and exclusion, Sarah refused to be completely shut out. Her father deserved to be honored, and she was determined to pay her respects, regardless of Clara's wishes. In the quiet hours of the night, while Clara, Emily, and Thomas slept soundly in their inherited comfort, Sarah began to plan her own small tribute. She couldn't afford a fancy bouquet or an expensive eulogy. Instead, she decided to create something from the heart, something that truly reflected her father's spirit. She gathered wildflowers from the fields he loved, carefully selecting each bloom for its color and fragrance. She remembered his favorite, the bright yellow sunflowers that always seemed to turn their faces towards the sun, just like him. Then, she found an old, worn, leather-bound journal, a gift he had given her years ago. Inside, she penned her memories, her heart aching with each word. She wrote of their early morning rides, of his booming laughter that echoed through the valley, of his gentle hands that could mend anything, from a broken fence to a broken heart. She wrote of his unwavering kindness, his infectious optimism, and the profound love that bound them together. The words flowed from her pen like tears, each sentence a testament to the extraordinary man he was. It wasn't a polished, eloquent speech, but it was honest and raw, filled with the simple, unadulterated love of a daughter for her father. She knew it wouldn't change Clara's mind or soften Emily and Thomas's hearts, but it was for her. It was for her father. It was a way to say goodbye, to honor his memory, and to reclaim a small piece of the love that had been stolen from her. She would deliver her tribute, no matter what obstacles stood in her way. The day of the funeral dawned gray and somber, mirroring the heavy feeling in Sarah's heart. She dressed in her simplest dress, a faded blue cotton frock that had been her mother's. It wasn't new or fashionable, but it was clean and respectable, and it felt like a connection to the past, to a time when her family was whole. Clutching the bouquet of wildflowers in one hand and the worn journal in the other, Sarah walked towards the church, her steps heavy with apprehension. As she approached the entrance, she saw Clara standing guard, her face a mask of disapproval. Emily and Thomas stood behind her, their arms crossed, their expressions cold and unwelcoming. "I can't allow you to come in like that, Sarah," Clara said, her voice sharp and unwavering. "Those flowers are inappropriate. And what's that you're carrying?" Sarah's chin lifted slightly, her eyes meeting Clara's gaze. "These flowers are from my father's fields. He loved them, and this is a tribute I wrote for him." Clara scoffed. "We have already arranged for a proper service. Your sentiments are not needed. Besides," she added, her voice dropping to a near whisper, "you're not dressed appropriately. This is a respectable event." Sarah's heart sank, but she refused to back down. "He was my father," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I have a right to be there. I have a right to say goodbye." Clara's eyes narrowed. "You are causing a scene, Sarah. Please just go home. It's for the best." She reached out to block Sarah's path, her grip surprisingly strong. The other mourners, arriving for the service, began to stare, their faces a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. Sarah stood her ground, her heart pounding, tears welling in her eyes. She wouldn't be deterred. Her father deserved better. A hush fell over the crowd as a lone figure appeared on the horizon. A cowboy, silhouetted against the gray sky, rode towards the church on a sleek, black horse. He was tall and lean, his face weathered and tanned, etched with lines that spoke of a life lived outdoors. He wore a worn leather vest, a dusty Stetson hat pulled low over his eyes, and a pair of well-worn boots that had clearly seen many miles. He moved with a quiet confidence, a sense of purpose that commanded attention. He reined in his horse at the edge of the gathering, his gaze sweeping over the scene before him. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, took in the tense atmosphere, the disapproving faces of Clara, Emily, and Thomas, and the heartbroken expression on Sarah's face. He sat there for a moment, silent and observant, a stoic figure against the backdrop of the somber funeral gathering. The wind rustled through his vest, carrying with it the scent of leather and sagebrush. He seemed an unlikely participant in such a formal occasion, an outsider who had stumbled upon a private drama. The mourners, momentarily distracted from the unfolding conflict, turned their attention to the cowboy, their curiosity piqued. Who was this mysterious stranger, and what was his purpose? He seemed to emanate an aura of quiet strength, a sense of justice that made people pause and take notice. He dismounted his horse with a fluid motion, his boots landing softly on the ground. He then slowly walked towards the church entrance, his eyes fixed on the scene unfolding before him, his presence a silent challenge to the injustice he was witnessing. He was a force to be reckoned with, a lone wolf who had arrived to right a wrong. The cowboy stopped a few feet from Clara, his shadow falling over her. He removed his hat, revealing a head of close-cropped, graying hair, and his eyes, the color of faded denim, met Clara's with a steady, unwavering gaze. "Ma'am," he said, his voice deep and resonant, carrying easily through the hushed crowd. "I couldn't help but overhear. Seems to me you're preventing this young woman from paying her respects to her father." Clara bristled, her face flushed with indignation. "This is a private matter," she snapped. "And who are you to interfere?" "Name's Cole," he replied, his voice calm but firm. "And I knew the deceased. A good man, as I recall. A man who wouldn't want his daughter turned away from his own funeral." "Sarah is being difficult," Clara said, attempting to regain control of the situation. "She's not dressed appropriately, and her offerings are simply not suitable for a service of this magnitude." Cole's gaze softened as he turned to Sarah, his eyes filled with a gentle understanding. "Those wildflowers are beautiful, miss," he said, his voice laced with genuine admiration. "They're a fitting tribute to a man who loved the land." He then turned back to Clara, his expression hardening. "And as for her being dressed inappropriately, I see a young woman showing respect in the best way she knows how. Seems to me, it's your heart that's dressed inappropriately, ma'am." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Now, I'm not one to interfere in family matters," he continued, his voice gaining an edge. "But I won't stand by and watch a good man's daughter be treated this way. Let her in, ma'am. Let her say goodbye to her father. It's the right thing to do." He stood his ground, a silent sentinel, his presence a powerful force against Clara's coldness. The crowd watched, breathlessly, waiting to see what Clara would do. The cowboy had thrown down the gauntlet, and the tension in the air was palpable. Clara, flustered by Cole's unexpected intervention and the watchful eyes of the community, hesitated. Seeing her uncertainty, Cole pressed his advantage. "I remember a time," Cole began, his voice softening, drawing the crowd closer with his story, "when your husband, bless his soul, helped me out of a real bind. I was just a young, greenhorn cowboy, lost and broke, my horse gone lame. I stumbled onto his ranch, near delirious with thirst and exhaustion. He didn't know me from Adam, but he took me in, fed me, nursed my horse back to health, and gave me directions to the nearest town." He paused, a hint of emotion in his voice. "He wouldn't take a dime for it, said it was just the neighborly thing to do. He told me, a man's got to help another man when he's down. That act of kindness," Cole continued, his gaze fixed on Clara, "changed my life. I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for your husband's generosity." "He was a good man, a truly good man," Cole reiterated, his voice resonating with sincerity. "And he loved his daughter dearly. I saw it in his eyes every time he looked at her. He wouldn't want her standing out here, heartbroken and alone, on the day he's laid to rest." Cole turned to the priest, who had been observing the scene with growing concern. "Father," he said, his voice respectful. "Surely, you agree that a daughter has a right to mourn her father. Can you deny her that basic human dignity?" The priest, a kind-faced man with gentle eyes, nodded slowly. "Mr. Cole is right," he said, his voice clear and firm. "Sarah has every right to be here. Clara, I urge you to reconsider." The tide had turned. The community, moved by Cole's story and the priest's support, began to murmur their agreement. Clara, realizing she was losing control, bit her lip in frustration. With the community and the priest now siding with Sarah, Clara knew she was defeated. Her face contorted with resentment, but she stepped aside, her eyes blazing with anger. "Fine," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "But don't expect any special treatment." Sarah, her heart filled with gratitude, offered Cole a small, grateful smile. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for everything." Cole simply nodded, his eyes conveying a silent understanding. "Go on now, miss," he said gently. "Your father's waiting." Sarah, clutching her flowers and journal, walked past Clara and into the church. The interior was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of incense and lilies. The mourners, who had witnessed the drama unfold outside, turned to watch her as she made her way down the aisle. She found a seat near the back, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt out of place, surrounded by people dressed in expensive suits and elegant dresses. But as she looked at the casket, adorned with flowers and draped with an American flag, she knew she was where she needed to be. The service began, the priest's words echoing through the church. Sarah listened, her mind filled with memories of her father. She remembered his warm smile, his strong hands, and his unwavering love. She closed her eyes, picturing him riding buck across the open fields, his laughter carried on the wind. A tear trickled down her cheek, a mixture of grief and gratitude. She was finally there, able to say goodbye, thanks to the kindness of a stranger who had once been shown kindness himself by her father. Now it was time to deliver her tribute. As the priest concluded his eulogy, Clara rose to deliver her own prepared remarks, a polished and impersonal tribute that focused on her late husband's business acumen and community standing. Sarah listened, her heart sinking. It was as if Clara was talking about a completely different person, someone she barely knew. When Clara finished, Sarah felt a surge of determination. She couldn't let her father's memory be defined by such a shallow portrayal. She stood up, her legs trembling, and walked towards the front of the church. Clara, Emily, and Thomas watched her with thinly veiled hostility. "Father," Sarah said, her voice clear and strong despite her nervousness, "I have something I'd like to share." Clara opened her mouth to protest, but the priest raised his hand, silencing her. He looked at Sarah with kind encouragement. "Please, Sarah," he said gently, "we would be honored to hear from you." Sarah took a deep breath and opened the worn journal. Her voice wavered at first, but as she began to read, her confidence grew. She spoke of her father's laughter, his love of the land, his unwavering kindness, and the countless ways he had touched her life. She shared stories of their early morning rides, of his silly jokes, and of the lessons he had taught her about life, love, and loss. Her words were simple, heartfelt, and genuine. They painted a vivid picture of a man who was far more than just a rancher or a businessman. He was a father, a friend, and a hero. As she read, tears streamed down her face, and she noticed that many others in the congregation were also wiping their eyes. Even some of the more hardened faces in the crowd softened as they listened to her heartfelt tribute. She was sharing the true essence of her father, and everyone in the church could feel it. As Sarah finished reading, a profound silence filled the church. The air was thick with emotion, and many mourners were openly weeping. Clara, Emily, and Thomas, however, remained unmoved, their faces tight with resentment. Their coldness was a stark contrast to the warmth and love that had filled the room during Sarah's tribute. After a moment, a woman from the congregation, a longtime friend of Sarah's father, stood up. "That was beautiful, Sarah," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your father would have been so proud of you." One by one, others rose to offer their support, sharing their own memories of Sarah's father, reinforcing the image of a kind, generous, and loving man. They spoke of his willingness to help others, his unwavering integrity, and his infectious sense of humor. Their words served as a powerful condemnation of Clara's earlier attempts to portray him as merely a successful businessman. The community's outpouring of support was a clear rejection of Clara's cold-heartedness and a testament to the enduring power of love and family. It was a moment of reckoning, a turning point that exposed Clara's cruelty and highlighted Sarah's strength and resilience. Seeing the shift in the community's sentiment, Clara, Emily, and Thomas exchanged nervous glances. They realized that their plan to isolate Sarah and control the narrative had backfired. They had underestimated the power of her love for her father and the community's loyalty to him. The funeral, intended to be a celebration of their newfound wealth and status, had become a public indictment of their greed and callousness. The truth had been revealed, and the community had chosen to side with Sarah. After the service, as the mourners filed out of the church, many approached Sarah, offering words of comfort and support. They spoke of her father's legacy of kindness and generosity, assuring her that his spirit would live on in the community. Some even offered practical assistance, volunteering to help her with the ranch chores or providing meals. Clara, Emily, and Thomas stood to the side, isolated and ostracized. They could feel the community's disapproval, a palpable force that separated them from the others. The warmth and compassion that flowed towards Sarah were in stark contrast to the coldness that surrounded them. Even the priest, after offering Sarah his condolences, approached Clara, his expression grave. "Clara," he said softly, "I urge you to consider your actions. Your husband was a good man, and he would want his daughter to be treated with love and respect. Perhaps it's not too late to make amends." The community's unwavering support for Sarah sent a clear message. Love, kindness, and compassion would always triumph over greed and cruelty. The power of their collective spirit served as a beacon of hope, illuminating the path towards healing and reconciliation. Sarah, overwhelmed by the outpouring of love, felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced since her father's death. She knew that she wasn't alone, that she had a community of friends and neighbors who would stand by her side. The ranch, once a symbol of loss and isolation, now felt like a place of belonging once again. The love of her father, the kindness of a stranger, and the unwavering support of her community had given her the strength to face the future. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the valley, Sarah stood by her father's graveside, surrounded by friends and neighbors. The air was filled with the scent of wildflowers and the comforting sounds of crickets chirping. She felt a profound sense of peace, a quiet understanding that her father's spirit would always be with her. She glanced around, searching for Cole, the lone cowboy who had so selflessly intervened on her behalf. But he was nowhere to be seen. He had quietly slipped away, his good deed done, leaving behind only a faint memory of his presence and a deep sense of gratitude in Sarah's heart. Later that evening, as Sarah sat on the porch, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky, she made a decision. She would honor her father's memory by continuing his legacy of kindness and generosity. She would use the ranch, not as a source of wealth or power, but as a place of healing and hope, a sanctuary for those in need. She knew it wouldn't be easy. Clara and her children were still resentful and controlling. But Sarah was no longer alone. She had the support of her community, the memory of her father's love, and the unwavering belief that good would always triumph over evil. And as for Cole, the mysterious cowboy who had appeared just when she needed him most, she knew that their paths would likely never cross again. But she would never forget his act of kindness, his quiet strength, and his unwavering commitment to justice. He was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, and that even the smallest act of compassion can make a world of difference. Sarah had found her peace, her sense of belonging, and the strength to carry on, forever grateful for the simple cowboy who stopped a funeral for her.